This show is brought to you by Safety FM.
Warning, the following broadcast contains adult language, adult content, frank safety discussions, and stories that might sound unbelievable. But believe me, every one of those stories is true. We didn't start the safety war, but we are going to fight to win it. For our families, for our communities, for our workplaces, and for our lives. Is your safety training old, stale, and hackneyed? Is your safety trainer still preaching a warped version of behavior-based safety? How about safety training that actually addresses your hazards in your workplaces and is not standardized baloney from 25 years ago? Contact the Safety Wars team at safetywars.com or call Jim Posel at 845-269-5772. Remember, if you're receiving this message, you are the solution to unsafe workplaces.
I don't know how we do it, but again, Rockland County is in the news because of some type of public health emergency. A couple years back, it was the measles. This is before COVID. We had a measles outbreak. We had a lot of anti-vaccine people or communities here in Rockland County where I live. Where Safety Wars is based out of. And we even had one individual who reportedly went into a department store trying to get people sick with measles so they would have an immune response and be naturally immune to it after that, or during this whole thing. Then, a couple years later, what did we have? We had COVID. But what was nice was that we already had a lot of the infrastructure in place with dealing with an outbreak because of measles we had experience. Then, a couple months back, monkeypox in the Hudson Valley. Thankfully, we've only had one reported case in Rockland County, but again, that whole area. COVID was a nightmare. We were one of the epicenters, especially at the beginning of the pandemic here. This week, what do we have? What's our crisis? Our crisis is the first reported case of polio since 2013 in this country. I'll just go into what the New York State Department of Health has said. This is from July 21st. The New York State Department of Health and Rockland County Department of Health today alerted the public to a case of polio in a Rockland County resident. State and county health officials are advising medical practitioners and healthcare providers to be vigilant for additional cases. This release also goes on to say that the importance of polio vaccinations. And as a little aside, several years back I was working at the Sanofi Pasteur vaccine facility in Swiftwater, Pennsylvania, and that's where Jonas Salk had invented the polio vaccination. The buildings were still there when I was there. Pretty interesting place. Based on what we know, this is the state health commissioner saying this, Mary T. Bassett. Based on what we know about this case and polio in general, the Department of Health strongly recommends that unvaccinated individuals get vaccinated or boosted with the FDA-approved IPV polio vaccine as soon as possible. And it's a safe vaccine, according to the health commissioner. And what is polio? Polio is a viral disease that can affect the nervous system and cause muscle weakness. The polio virus typically enters the body through the mouth, usually from hands contaminated with fecal matter, that's Gruvno for everybody else, of an infected person. Respiratory and oral-to-oral transmission through saliva may also occur. I remember my parents, grandparents, talking about the polio outbreak. The biggest one, or the most well-known one, I should say, is from the early 1950s, something around 1952. But the fear that it struck in everybody with the effects of the illness and everything else. One of the things was, and we had a former president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who had contracted polio, I believe, in the late 1920s, early 1930s, that put him in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. Often with polio, it attacked the diaphragm and the respiratory system and paralyzed the respiratory system, which necessitated people going into, is known as an iron lung. Where did this this virus come from, this current one? The source they know is from outside the country, because in the United States, we have used attenuated or deactivated viruses in the vaccination since about 2000. Vaccines in this country, the United States, don't carry live polio. However, other countries still use live polio vaccines. What I wanted to comment here is this. This made the news, so this was very well known in the New York area, and eventually made the national news, but they really haven't given us officially any information as to who the individual is, what community they're from, or anything else. There's stuff that's been released on social media about the community this individual allegedly was from. I'm not going to mention who it is, or where it's from, or anything like that. But you really need to, and I think we need to, as a society, remember news coverage, right? What's the news's job? The news's job is real simple. They need to get advertising revenue. They need to get viewers. They need to get listeners. They need to get readers. Do people actually read anymore? I don't know. It's to hype stories. It's to put you into a state of anxiety so you're able to go and watch the news or read the news or whatever, what have you. This is what happened here with this so far, and this is a couple of days after the incident here with the polio. We don't know what to do with the information. There's somebody with polio in Rockland County. Okay, well, what do we do with that information? What am I supposed to do? Okay, well, and that's where the news stops. I had to go in and dig real deep, right? Real deep meaning about 3 clicks on the internet, to get to the original press release from the state, which I just read in part here. And it's along the lines of, well, this is not a problem at this point. However, they're doing some type of contact trace and figure out if it is a problem. Don't you think that would have been a little bit useful in the other news reports out there? I said, yeah, the Rockland County guy came down, and I'm presuming a guy, came down with a polio, but it's not a problem because of X, Y, and Z. And we're doing contact trace, we're getting to the bottom of it. That would make me feel a lot better, rather than there's polio in Rockland County, news at 11. And it's like, okay, now what? Now they want you to go to 11 o'clock, or go, look at our website at, createapanic.com, sort of thing. I don't know if that's a real website. I'll get yelled at. But anyway, useful information. Todd Conklin, and his book, recent book, When the Worst Thing Happens, or what, I forget the name, but great book. 3 things we want to know. This is what we know. This is what we don't know. This is what we're doing to get to the bottom of this and to manage this. 3 things. Now let's look at the news coverage. Well, this is what's going on. We don't know this, and that's it. Okay, now what are we supposed to do with that? I don't know. It's only downhill. But when you go into the actual press release, here it goes from New York, right? Hey, we're going to have vaccination clinics available in that area. We're going to do some contact tracing here. This is what we know about this. We're doing good, right? That would have been much more useful than what the headlines that they give. So I will keep you folks updated on anything that happens here with this. And remember, when you're doing this stuff, remember the hype. Remember, a lot of times it's to keep people in a state of anxiety so we can get viewers, to get listeners. Get to the bottom of the things. If they're not giving you the information, do a little bit more research. And remember those things, right? This is what we know, this is what we don't know, this is what we're doing to find out. This is how we're managing it. Because if you get anything more than that, you get disinformation, you get conspiracy theories, and you get everything else. And if you have that, you're never going to win that safety war. For Safety Wars, this is Jim Posel.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the host and its guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the company. Examples of analysis discussed within this podcast are only examples. They should not be utilized in the real world as the only solution available, as they are based only on very limited and dated open source information. Assumptions made within this analysis are not reflective of the position of the company. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, mechanical, electronic, recording, or otherwise, without prior written permission of the creator of the podcast, Jay Allen.